It's 2:06 on Talk Radio 790 KABC. You're listening to The John Phillips Show. Johnny's on vacation. He'll be back a week from today. It's Randy Wang broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studio. The phone number to join us, 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. We'll read some of your emails later on in the hour. And you can follow me on the socials, Twitter and Instagram. I am Randy Wang Radio. Well, we are now in day 3 of the SAG-AFTRA strike. We're in month 3 of the WGA strike. Words got pretty heated at the end of last week. Here was what Bob Iger told CNBC about the writers' and the actors' demands.
There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic. And they are adding to a set of challenges that this business is already facing that is, quite frankly, very disruptive.
He said, quite frankly, 7 times in that interview. And Fran Drescher, the president of SAG-AFTRA, with the response.
I found them terribly repugnant and out of touch, positively tone deaf. And, I don't think it served him well. If I were that company, I would lock him behind doors and never let him talk to anybody.
Just a couple hours ago, the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass herself.
If you're feeling down, if you're feeling blue, let's get help for you.
She made the following statement on the writer's strike and the actor's strike. Quote, Los Angeles is experiencing a summer of struggle to make ends meet in all industries, education, hospitality, goods delivery, or entertainment. Angelinos deserve fair contracts, whether you're a writer who has been on strike for more than 72 days or an actor who's been on strike for 72 hours. Wages and health benefits to afford housing, food, and the basic necessities to survive should be a minimum requirement in discussions. To talk to us about this and so much more, I am proud to welcome back to the John Phillips Show the anchor of the Fox 11 News at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 10 o'clock, and host of the statewide political program The Issue Is Friday nights on Fox 11, Elex Micahelson. Welcome back to KABC.
Hey, Randy, great to be with you.
Elex, we knew that in the teachers' strike, well, not the teachers' strike, the teacher support staff strike that the teachers' solidarity strike with, Karen Bass played an instrumental role in getting the negotiations done for that after just a few days. Do you think the mayor is going to start taking a bigger stance towards resolving this conflict?
Well, the big difference between that strike and the SAG strike is that strike really was a Los Angeles strike. It was the LAUSD. The SAG strike is really a national issue, or in some ways you could argue an international issue. There are SAG workers striking in Los Angeles, but there's also SAG workers striking in New York. There are members all around the world. So, yes, obviously, Hollywood is one of the signature industries of Los Angeles, but it really goes beyond her. This would be more of an issue for Governor Newsom to get involved with, or frankly, the president to get involved with. Part of the challenge on that front is we don't have a real Secretary of Labor right now. Julie Su, who is the former California Secretary of Labor, who's the Deputy Secretary of Labor, is doing that in an acting role. But the Senate doesn't look ready to confirm her. So this would be more appropriate as a federal issue with somebody in that role than perhaps the mayor of Los Angeles. Although the mayor's comments, I'm sure, can potentially be helpful in all of this.
I've noticed that whenever Gavin Newsom is asked about the strike, whether it was the writer's strike when that started a few months ago, or even when he was asked about the impending SAG-AFTRA strike last week, he's very hands-off with it, doesn't want to give away where he's leaning. But I imagine he's put in a pretty tough position because obviously he's pro-labor, he's pro-union, but also a lot of these big studio heads, including the president of Netflix, have given him a lot of money over the years, including Reed Hastings of Netflix giving him $3 million to defeat the recall in 2021.
Yeah, one of his biggest donors of anybody, Reed Hastings of Netflix. It's what Newsom has said to me when I've asked him about this in the past is that he doesn't want to say much publicly and doesn't want to tip his hand because he wants to be available to help negotiate it. But in order to do that, he needs to have trust from both sides. He said that if he's asked by both sides to get involved, he will get involved and he will help to negotiate an end to this the same way that Karen Bass was asked by both sides with that teacher support staff strike that you talked about. Both sides welcomed her involvement, so she got involved and she was going back and forth room to room to try to come to a deal. Newsom has said he'd be willing to do that if they ask him to do that, but so far they haven't asked him to do that. But part of why he doesn't take a, screw you Hollywood producers as a comment is then it would be impossible for him to then be brought in as sort of an objective third party.
We'll see if anything actually moves forward on that. Now, one issue that Gavin Newsom did weigh in on, and apparently weighed in pretty strongly, was when he was asked at an unrelated press conference about the California Assembly Public Safety Committee killing this bill last week that would have increased the penalties, making it a strike for child sex trafficking. This was an issue that as soon as Gavin Newsom realized it got national attention, he was all over.
Yeah, well, he was all over with less than 24 hours after that happened. I mean, it was a kind of a political disaster for California Democrats who came out and stopped a bill that passed unanimously in the state Senate. This wasn't just a Republican bill. This was a bill that every single Democrat in the state Senate supported, which was to strengthen laws against child sex traffickers. And then folks in the Public Assembly Committee, Public Safety Committee in the Assembly, some of the most sort of criminal justice reform advocates, some of the most progressive people in California politics, tried to stop it. And as my friend Brian Goldsmith said on our political show, The Issue Is, this Friday, Democrats don't want to be in the business of being associated with child sex traffickers. I mean, the politics of this are horrible. And so for Newsom, he realized that. Also, the new Speaker of the Assembly, Robert Rivas, who's pretty progressive, he noticed that. And both of them, within 24 hours, put pressure on the Democrats in that committee to change course. And less than a day later, they changed course and moved that bill forward, which showed the power of the pushback from the public after hearing about this issue on stations like KABC Radio and Fox 11, and also the pushback from the top Democrats in the state who may or may not want to run for president one day. And being pro-child sex trafficking is not particularly great in terms of ads for Iowa or New Hampshire.
Well, and it totally looks like over the past 6 months, especially with all the fentanyl bills that have been killed in that committee, that even though things were pretty outrageous, members of that committee, members of the assembly generally seem to operate with a certain level of anonymity, and that most people aren't paying attention to what goes on in Sacramento. But this one got everyone to pay attention, and when you shined a light on it, a lot of these people folded immediately to at least get this bill out of committee. Will it finally pass? We're not totally sure. Although Reggie Jones-Sawyer, who is the leader of that committee, he claimed in an interview this weekend that the reason he wanted to get it out of committee was because he says we were all getting death threats after the media started paying attention to this.
Well, I don't know if that's the only reason, but he did certainly say that. I mean, one of the interesting things that will come down the road, because we do have a new Speaker of the Assembly, Robert Rivas, part of what he's going to do next year when they come back is he's going to probably reappoint all the committee heads, and there'll be a complete shuffling of the deck. And so Reggie Jones-Sawyer is one of the people who's most likely to lose his job doing that after all this. So you could see a different approach to public safety come next year because there's now different people in charge of all of this. I think the Democrats are well aware of the political peril that comes in this. But you bring up a good point, which is that I think one of the great failures of our media, including all of our stations, is that I don't think we put enough attention in Sacramento. There was a burst of energy of reporting there when Arnold Schwarzenegger was in there for a bit. But there's so much focus on Washington where, frankly, almost nothing gets done because of the way the system is set up there. In Sacramento, a ton of stuff gets done because you got a Democratic supermajority. And with a Democratic supermajority and not a lot of press attention, they're able to do things without people noticing. And I think it's important and incumbent on all of us in the media to pay more attention to what's happening in Sacramento. And frankly, all of us listening to use social media and use emails and all the rest of it to get the word out, because that's what happened with this bill. And because of that, we now have a different policy in the state.
Yeah, a lot of these people, especially in Sacramento, when you're in the legislature, you're not used to hearing from your constituents at all. And a lot of these people, there were still a few members that, were hardliners like Isaac Bryan and Mia Bonta. But the rest of them in that committee, the next day, they completely reversed course. And it shows that if you're paying attention, if you hold your elected officials accountable, they're not 100% likely, but they might be more likely to do the right thing on an issue that, like you said, Alex, had 100% bipartisan support passed unanimously out of the state Senate. So why was this a problem to begin with?
Exactly. And it's a point about that it's incumbent on all of us to pay attention to what's happening there. There's so little coverage of that. And Sacramento feels so far removed from Los Angeles sometimes, which, of course, is the biggest city in the state, the place where most of the votes come from, and yet is often not represented. It feels kind of like its own world. And I think all of us could do a better job of it. It's part of the reason why we do the issue is, and we try to highlight these things in a statewide way. But sometimes it's difficult to do it because a lot of people just don't pay that close of attention.
No, we can only pay attention to so many things. And a lot of the newsrooms across the state, especially newspapers, don't even have someone they send to Sacramento anymore. I mean, things are getting so tight at the LA Times, they got rid of the sports section. Alex, this is true. My sarcastic sports reports now have more sports information than the LA Times.
It's really sad. Honestly, though, the way that everybody can help in this, people that are listening, is subscribe to the LA Times. Subscribe to the different things. Watch, listen to your show. All these organizations are reacting to market forces. I mean, that's the same problem with the actors' strike, right? I mean, the actors are really frustrated that they're not making as much money under the new deals as they had in a previous media incarnation. But the media world's changed. The companies aren't making as much money either. Right? I mean, it's a different business model being on streaming than you were, when you had syndicated TV and reruns and all the rest of it. They were making more money, too, so the pie was bigger. It was easier to share out. And so that's the hard part for all of these media stories is as we have more and more and more options, that means that fewer and fewer eyeballs are on particular things, and it makes it much harder for everybody to make money.
We were talking about the LA Times. We're speaking with Elex Micahelson, anchor at Fox 11 at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock with my friend Marla Tejas, and, of course, 10 o'clock. You can also watch his show, The Issue Is, every Friday night on Fox 11. Have you seen the rumors that after selling the San Diego Union-Tribune that it looks like the owner of the LA Times, Dr. Patrick Soon-Chung, is looking to sell the LA Times too?
Certainly seen those rumors. He's come out to say that those rumors aren't true. Patrick Soon-Chung bought the LA Times from a pretty terrible ownership group with the express consent of a point of trying to make money from it. But he also did it sort of as a public service, a belief that there's real importance in having a local paper of record that's well done. And when he first started, there was a real infusion and a real investment. We've seen in the last year or so a real pullback on some of that and some real frustration from the folks at the Times. Which leads some of them to believe that he may be getting ready to sell it. But whoever is in charge, whether it's Dr. Patrick Soon-Chung or somebody else, I hope they invest in that because our whole society is much better served by having a strong paper that holds politicians accountable. It's one of the real problems, especially in the middle of the country, in a lot of these rural areas that can't afford the local paper. There's these city council meetings that nobody's paying attention to. We saw that so often in Southern California. Remember, places like Bell, where everybody was corrupt and ended up going to prison because nobody ever paid attention to what they're doing. When people feel like nobody's paying attention, human nature, they try to push it as far as they possibly can. There's great value in journalism, but people need to invest in it as companies and viewers, listeners, readers. They need to invest in it, too.
Well, forget the city of Bell. Things have gotten so bad that we're not paying attention to what happens in the city of Los Angeles, and the whole city council's corrupt, with now our fourth member facing charges.
Good point. Yeah. And there needs to be a real conversation about how did we get there and what sort of things we should do. And even after that, frankly, we had a city council election just a few weeks ago to replace Nuri Martinez, who was caught on, saying all these racist things, ends up leaving a city council president. And the turnout is 11%. 11% turnout. How many people were outraged and posting on social media about those comments and saying things and weighing in from oftentimes a place of ignorance? But then when it came time to actually vote, to get involved, to clean up the system, to have somebody else in there, 11% of people vote? That's a failure for all of us. It's a failure for the media for not talking about it more, but it's also a failure for voters for not getting out there and getting involved. The only way that this is going to change is if people themselves get involved and demand that it change.
Now, I live in that district. I wonder what your take is on why the numbers were so depressing, not just in the primary, but in the runoff as well. Is this an indictment of California's top two primary, where the people pretty much have the same policy solutions for everything and you're just voting on personality? Or are we just at a point where even though it's been so easy to vote here, they send the ballot right to your mailbox, we've got voter apathy and people just don't care?
I don't know if it's a top two thing, because frankly, if say that had ended up with a Democrat and Republican, although city council has not ever been a partisan office, so that wouldn't have applied to that anyways. But say if you ended up with a Democrat and Republican in a similar election with a district that was so heavily weighted Democrat, you could make an argument less of a reason to vote because it's more of a shoo-in, if that makes sense. I think it's voter apathy. I think it's people not knowing that the election's happening. I think it's the media not doing more to explain the differences between them. I think it's some of that's a failure of the candidates themselves to not get people more excited. And I think it's also a lot of people that don't believe in the system itself, that feel like the system is so corrupt and so terrible that it doesn't matter who you send there, that it's all bull. Or sorry, yeah, and they don't, and so that I'm like Larry Elder on your show, on your show last week, So that I think needs to be looked at too. Is how do we make people who have become so frustrated with institutions feel like the institutions can work. And that's, I think, a bigger challenge than just a couple people running for city council. That's a foundational issue that I think we all need to look at.
Well, what I can definitely say, as Alex goes and washes out his potty mouth, that was fantastic, by the way, buddy. As someone that lives in that district, it wasn't that people didn't know the election was happening, because there was a level of direct mail and door knocking that got to the point where I think some people in the district that I live in were so fed up with these people bothering them about the election so much, they threw their hands in the air and said, forget it, I'm not voting for any of you.
Is that why? I mean, why do you think? You live in the district. You see it. What's your take?
I think we've got a combination of apathy, and people are sick and tired of having their mailboxes full with misleading mailers. But for the most part, it's people have so many other things going on in their lives. They should be paying attention to local politics, but they don't. You're 100% right. One of the problems is when they look on their Twitter or their Facebook, when they watch, national news, they're seeing national subjects. When they look at local news, they're seeing local subjects. But we get distracted even by races that we shouldn't be getting distracted about this early. There's being so much attention paid on the California Senate race that the primary is not until next March that people completely ignored the race in the local city council that just happened.
And as we've seen in the last few years, and COVID should show us this, oftentimes those local races are actually far more significant in terms of our everyday lives and in terms of the decisions that impact us than a lot of these federal elections are. And so the real power often is people in the Board of Supervisors, the Assembly, the Senate, the city council, the district attorney, these jobs, which a lot of people have ignored for so long, I think we're starting to realize have huge power, and if used incorrectly, huge power to take us in the wrong direction.
We're speaking with Elex Micahelson, anchor at Fox 11 at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 10 o'clock tonight. Also, host of The Issue Is, which you watch every single Friday night on Fox 11. Speaking of the California Senate race, we saw new fundraising numbers that showed Adam Schiff ran away with it. Being censured was the best thing that ever happened to him financially. But the latest poll from the PPIC shows that Katie Porter is now leading Adam Schiff by 3 points in the latest primary poll. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that poll would probably be within the margin of error, so it's essentially tied. I think you see two things happening. One, the real focus right now is on fundraising more than anything else. Schiff had the same thing that happened to him, what happened to Donald Trump. after he got indicted by Alvin Bragg. It was seen as an overreach. It was seen as the other side being against him. And so all these different forces from around the country backed him up as a way to say, essentially, F you to the other side. And that turned out to be good politics for Adam Schiff. I think when it comes to the Senate race, most people are not really paying attention to it because it's not until March of next year. Those of us that do this on a daily basis are obsessed with it and looking at this stuff every day. But I think most people haven't really tuned in yet. The ads haven't started running. Adam Schiff's going to be able to run a ton of ads because of all that money he's raising. We haven't had the debates yet. And so I think it's way too early to draw any sort of conclusion in terms of who's going to win this Senate race. But I do think it's good for the democracy that we have a real race that's going to be close. And so that will encourage all the candidates to go out and do debates, to do town halls, to get in front of voters, which is something we haven't really seen in California in like a generation because so many of our races are just blowouts before they even start.
They absolutely are. Elex Micahelson, host of The Issue Is. Now, people that didn't get to watch last week's The Issue Is, you can do what I do every Saturday morning and watch it on YouTube. Go to Fox 11's YouTube page or Elex Micahelson. Who did you have on last Friday?
Last Friday on, we had a political panel with Dan Schnur and Brian Goldsmith talking about the crimes issues we talked about. We also had Elizabeth Wagmeister from Variety talking about the strikes. This Friday, we're going to have James Gallagher, the Republican Assembly leader, is going to be in studio talking about some of those same issues. We also have, I'm sure, one of your favorites, Marianne Williamson, is coming in.
Oh,
to talk
yes.
about her campaign for president. So that should be an interesting conversation as well. You know, we believe in highlighting a lot of different perspectives and letting viewers or listeners make up their own minds. So we're welcoming all the presidential candidates. So Marianne Williamson will be in this week.
All right. Marianne Williamson with Elex Micahelson this Friday night. Now, that is appointment viewing. And, of course, you can watch Elex tonight on the Fox 11 News at 5 o'clock with Christine Devine, 6 o'clock with Marla Tejas, and 10 o'clock with Christine Devine. He's on every single night on Fox 11. Give him a watch. Elex, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm actually off on vacation today. I did this just for you, but you can watch Marla and Christine tonight, and I'll be back tomorrow.
That is so, you know what, this is the third or fourth time that I've been filling in that you came to do this while you were on vacation. I really appreciate that.
Yes. Apparently I have some issues and need to learn how to take time off, but I can't get away from you, apparently. So, I keep coming back.
You know, in appreciation for that, I won't highlight too much that you cursed on my show.
Yeah. Okay.
Elex, you have a great rest of your day.
It's legal in some places. Yeah.
It should be legal here, but, it's still the FCC.
Okay.
There he is. Elex Micahelson, everybody. Boy, I don't know what it is about this show. People love to blast away. And so do I. But I can only do it in the commercial break. So let's go do one right now so I can curse. It's the John Phillips Show. You can email us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And if you like to download the podcast of the show, go to kbc.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcasts app, iHeart, Spotify. And here's one of the advantages of downloading the John Phillips Show podcast. When you listen live on the radio, and we thank you so much for doing that, that's how we have jobs here, because you listen. But when somebody says something they're not supposed to, I have to hit what's called the dump button. It's literally labeled dump, and it deletes the last 6 seconds from the air so it never goes to you. So you might miss a total, if I have to dump a couple of times because someone sent something incredibly outrageous, you might miss like what exactly happened. You just hear the sound skip from one point to another point. But when you download the podcast version of the show, because I'm recording live while we're doing it, I can go in and bleep out what somebody was saying, and you can hear the full context. So here is Elex just a few minutes ago.
It doesn't matter who you send there, that it's all sorry. Yeah. And they don't. And so that I'm like Larry Elder on your show.
So please download the podcast of this show at kbc.com, click on podcasts, or search for the John Phillips Show anywhere you get podcasts. I know. It's like mailers for political candidates. Every radio show you listen to is begging you to download your podcast. Well, I don't know. Maybe it'll help us get a raise at some point. So do it. I'm sure you're well aware that it is incredibly hot. Now, it's been hotter. It's been a lot hotter. But it's been pretty damn hot because we're not used to it because it's been pretty damn cold. And maybe that's why the state of California, in their infinite wisdom, has produced a brand new set of PSAs. Because Gavin Newsom's answer to everything in the state of California is we need more public service announcements, which means that we're producing content funded by taxpayer dollars and giving money to TV and radio stations, except this one for some reason, to air public service announcements. In fact, when being asked last week about the heat wave, Gavin even specifically said, we're going to do a bunch of PSAs about the heat.
And that's why we put out yesterday a $20 million investment in a public activation campaign. And I say activation, it's not just an information campaign.
And what do you know? Over the weekend, the California Department of Public Health did put out a 2.5-minute stay out of the heat PSA. This is funded by your tax dollars. And that not only means that we are paying to produce this content, but we are also paying for this to be aired on Channel 5 or KFI or who knows where else. Again, for some reason, they don't like to give us any of that money. I would love to do an endorsement for, hey, it's Randy for staying out of the heat, but Gavin Newsom doesn't want to pay me my talent fee. So let's hear what the state has to say, because it's hot.
It's summertime in California, and with climate change, it can get extremely hot, extremely fast, and for long periods of time.
You're not kidding. And I love how we're flaming this. It's a climate change thing. It wasn't hot in the 70s or the 80s, but it's hot now.
It's summertime in California, and with climate change, it can get extremely hot, extremely fast, and for long periods of time.
I'm sure if I was a darker person, I could do something really wrong out of context with that, but I'm not going to do that. I do not like to take clips out of context that could possibly sound dirty. Never have done it, never will do it.
We often lead from the front, but it is time for us to lead from the back.
But it just didn't feel big enough.
Summer heat waves can be dangerous, especially for people who may be more sensitive to the heat.
I mean, like me, the overweight, the flop sweaters.
That includes young children, older adults, people with chronic diseases, outdoor workers, people who are unhoused, and those who are pregnant.
Oh no, the pregnant homeless people, they're going to get heat stroke. What are we going to do?
When the heat is on, be prepared. To stay
Again, this is funded by your tax dollars. The Department of Public Health for the state of California is spending money in their budget to produce this video and send it to TV and radio stations. It's not a public service announcement in that we air it for free. We air it because you give us money.
To stay cool.
Well, we don't, but other stations do.
To stay cool.
We would, but they don't want to pay us.
To stay cool on a hot day, take a short, cool shower or stay in an air-conditioned area.
I don't know if you've ever heard this, but if you're hot, you should take a shower to cool down. If you're hot, turn on the AC. This is brand new information.
If you don't have an air conditioner, visit a cooling center, a shopping mall, or a public building like a library.
I thought all the libraries are cooling centers, and you can't go to the library because they're a de facto homeless shelter.
Wear long-sleeved, lightweight, light-colored, loose-fitting clothing.
What's wrong with my short-sleeve tee?
When outside, wear a wide-brim hat, sunglasses, and plenty of sunscreen with
What is this royalty-free music they've got in the background? It's getting real jazzy that I'm getting distracted, and I'm not going to remember to go outside with a hat and sunglasses. I wouldn't know this information if the California Department of Public Health didn't tell me to. I bet you there's a certain public health director here in Los Angeles that is jealous she didn't think of this first.
Yeah.
But she's the last person that could give you a video on what to do if you're out in the sunshine.
When outside, wear a wide brim hat, sunglasses, and plenty of sunscreen with SPF of at least 15, reapplying every 2 hours. Plan your outdoor activities before 10 a.m. or in the evening. If you must be outside, rest often in shady areas and drink plenty of water. Check local news for extreme.
Did you hear that, everyone? If you're thirsty, drink water. I know you might think that the best thing to drink when you're in the middle of a 100-degree day is hot coffee. No, it's cold water. And now you know something.
Check local news for extreme heat alerts and keep in touch with others, especially older adults and those who may be more vulnerable to the heat. Know the warning signs of heat-related illness. If you feel any of these symptoms, move to a cooler location immediately.
If you're feeling really hot, go somewhere that's not hot. Why, that's brilliant.
If symptoms persist, seek medical attention. Dehydration can be a big problem in extreme heat. Don't wait until you're thirsty. Drink water early and often. Summer fruits and vegetables contain water. Salads will help you feel light and hydrated.
So you're saying don't go for the Shakey's bunch of lunch when it's 100 degrees outside, because just from the walk to the Shakey's door to the parking lot, you'll pass out from heat stroke because you ate too many chicken and mojos? Come on.
Okay.
Longtime fans will know I was in that commercial.
Okay, Californians, have a happy, healthy, and safe summer.
There you go. In case you weren't aware, the California Department of Public Health has the advice you need to beat the heat. And you paid for that.